Because of the growing interest in propane school buses, we have a propane panel, and the moderator for that will be Keith Leach. And so, if you're on the propane panel, would you please come up now to join Keith, and so he can run the. And I don't see Keith. Where's Keith? Oh, here he comes. Okay, good. And I wanted to also mention uh, when we do our break, and you're able to not the short break, but when we do lunch and networking, there is a propane bus outside that you can look at, but there's also a propane genset that will be powering up a school bus, an electric school bus. So there's a mobile power unit running on renewable propane, providing electricity for a school bus at a remote location here that doesn't have a charger available. So it's an interesting opportunity for propane, not just as a power source for the vehicle itself, but also for uh, powering a powering a genset that can then charge the vehicle. And I'm not sure what Gina's got something going on there, but the panel will begin in just a moment. This guy. I'd say just go and get down early.
Okay, Tim says we're going to go, even though we're not supposed to start till 10:30, but that's okay. Everybody will appreciate a little bit longer break later. Again, my name is Keith Leach. I'm the co-director with Tim of the Sacramento Clean Cities Coalition. I am curious for those of you that are from fleets within our coalition footprint. I don't know if Tim mentioned it earlier. I don't think he did, but we are rebranding ourselves. That's why we have a new logo here. We're talking about Northern California. We're expanding our footprint all the way up to the Oregon border over the coming months. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Um, so the main thing we want you to know is that we're going to be doing many of these types of targeted events in more rural, smaller counties going to the north and going to the east. Tim mentioned the next event in State Line, Nevada on August 20th. Um, we are open to what you guys want to hear. In addition to bringing our supporters, our sponsors, our stakeholders that we have to provide information on their products, their vehicles, their infrastructure. We also want to provide information that's going to help fleet managers deal with all the complexities of running a fleet in this day and age. And there's quite a bit going on. So there's been suggestions about data-driven decision-making, planning, financing, alternative financing. A term that was shared with me earlier is workarounds. How are fleets going to comply with mandates coming out of CARB when fleets aren't able to access the funds to make a like-for-like replacement and possibly something entirely different in order to comply? And at the same time, you're all struggling with keeping older vehicles on the road. Uh, so please come see Tim or myself with your suggestions. If you have other suggestions of things that would be helpful to you, products that you'd like to see that aren't here. And with that, I'm going to get going here and introduce our panel here on heavy-duty propane vehicle and school bus insights. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Stephen Wally. He's from the Bluebird Corporation. Jerry Bollet, okay. He's the transportation lead in the Elk Grove School District. And John Barnett, he's our sales representative from Suburban Propane. So I'm going to start off with a question to Stephen of Bluebird. So, Stephen, why should student transportation leaders look at anything other than diesel or EV to power their buses?
That was one of the reasons why I asked the question earlier about how much funding there was. We have four options in student transportation. Of course, diesel leads the country, 420 29,000 buses out there, 29,000 gasoline, 25,000 propane, and about 4,800 deployed EV buses. So with all the funding, narrowing it down to Sacramento, if we had $10 million, basically we're doing 20 buses. And I think about 300 buses need to be replaced every year in this area. So where do the other 280 buses come from? And looking at other alternatives that aren't quite so expensive to accomplish the goal of zero and near zero, that's why we need to look there. Diesel buses are the default. You order bus, you're going to get a diesel bus, unless there's some other compelling reason financially, environmentally, that are going to, put you into the position of looking to an alternative. But I think it's going to take more than one alternative. And I appreciate the hydrogen as well, because we build buses. I can build an ammonia bus. I can build a hydrogen bus. But unless you can do it financially sustainable, you'll never accomplish your environmental sustainability goals. Okay, it'll be a project, and we'll get a few, and we'll have a ribbon cutting. But if we want to have deep, sustainable fleet replacement of diesel, we need to be cleaner than diesel. We need to be cheaper than diesel. We need to be able to operate just as well, just as far in the duty cycles as diesel. And we have to have a lot of this energy source to make that happen. And propane is a great alternative to look at for that.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to move to Jerry. He runs the Elk Grove School District transportation. How many propane buses are you running right now, Jerry? And what other types of fuels are you running?
So I'm the supervisor in the shop. We currently have 34 propane buses, and they go an average of 600,000 miles a year. We run over 2 million miles a year between all our fleet of vehicles. We currently have 16 EV buses, 3 CNG, and over 120 diesel. So obviously we run a majority of diesel, but we're starting to move towards propane because it's economical. It's cheaper to repair in the long run opposed to diesel buses. And matter of fact, Bluebird is the only propane offering now. And you can go to your local Ford manufacturer and get parts for them, which is nice. So that's what we have.
Okay, that's terrific. And that diesel, the diesel you're running, that's renewable diesel, right?
Yes, everything is renewable diesel.
Yeah. I did want to make a comment on that. Is there anyone in here still running petroleum diesel? Excellent. Okay. John, please educate us on the carbon intensity score and the opportunities with renewable propane products.
So yeah, carbon intensity score is a measurement of energy that we're able to measure the carbon footprint for propane, and we can compare that with propane and diesel and gasoline and electric and hydrogen, and basically the carbon intensity score per fuel. We're able to measure all of the energy on an equal playing field. So when it comes to renewable propane, we have a much lower carbon intensity score, or CI score, than even traditional propane. And in the state of California, we're one of the largest, if not the largest, renewable propane suppliers in the state, if not the country. So our renewable propane CI score in the state of California is between a 20 and 40, where the electric grid CI score is about an 81. And our traditional propane or fossil propane in the state of California is also about an 81, 82. So obviously, the CI score, the lower the CI score, the lower grams of carbon that's being produced. And it's kind of like golf, right? The lower the score, the better the fuel source. So again, our renewable propane here in the state is between 20 and 40.
Well, that sounds like a great opportunity, not only as far as to supplement your organization's zero emission compliance, but also to provide a good resilience with propane. And also, if you have a climate action plan for your organization, it's another strategy to reduce that carbon, those greenhouse gases, uh, at a more cost-effective uh, means right now, as zero emission vehicles and electric school buses are continuing to grow and become more cost effective. Stephen, what is the
Let
secret
me
to a
comment on, if I can, comment on the carbon intensity that John's talking about. The renewable propane, to John's point, is the same molecular structure as propane. So if somebody orders a propane bus, today, and maybe they don't have the access to renewable propane in Wyoming yet, but they can drop it in. They can start with a good intensity score of regular propane, but then move into your renewable propane at any time overnight. I remember Craig Beaverton, Oregon. He was transportation director of the year last year at SDN. And he overnight dropped in renewable propane, and it behaved exactly the same way. Same same miles per gallon, same proficiencies, power, and everything.
great? And Stephen, so what is the secret to a successful adoption of clean alternative fuel buses?
Well, like we talked about, we have a lot of options out there. We produce 4 different options, but there are more out there. But they're not going to have a deep replacement cycle unless, again, they are cleaner, cheaper, operate just as well, and we have a lot of that energy source. John Barnett's part of a network of propane suppliers that have access to the world's most is right here in the United States. The United States produces more propane than any other country in the world. As a matter of fact, we only use a third of what we produce, and 2/3 of it gets exported all over the world for 30 million other vehicles that are operating on propane. So if we do our job better, John, I'm picking on you and me, okay, then we'll keep more of it here and be able to use it. Because to Chris's point, he wanted $9 million out there, and the top of his list, he said they wanted the diesel particulate matter filter particulate matter reduced. Propane doesn't even have a particulate matter filter on it because the fuel itself doesn't have particulate matter. So we don't have to filter it out. We don't have to your point, Jerry, we don't have to work on cleaning them or replacing them. It's not there to replace.
Jerry, how about shedding a little light on the reliability of propane? Um, any differences in the maintenance requirements from the guys in the shop? Breakdowns? What have you found?
So with our facility, the maintenance reliability aspect of it, we go on less road calls for propane buses than we do electric. Honestly, um, the they're just reliable. Some of our routes go over 200 miles a day, so they don't have to bring the bus back. They fuel off site. The driver fuels the bus just like a diesel bus. They pull up to the island, they hook up the propane, turn it on just like a regular gas pump. 5-10 minutes later, away they go. So the reliability, the ease of operation, the ease of maintenance on them, and the parts are considerably cheaper than going to your local Cummins dealer and buying a turbo. There's no turbos, it's just a regular V8 or V10 gas engine, Ford. Uh, Super reliable, easy to work on for our technicians.
Yeah, those engines that Jerry's talking about are the 7.3 liter Ford engine. That's our powertrain. Our diesel and electric powertrains come from Cummins, and our gasoline and our propane powertrains come from Roush. And it's the same 7.3 liter engine that is operating on propane, that's operating on gasoline. 1,200 of those engines are built every day in Windsor by Ford. So to your point, Jerry, there's a lot of parts available. And the ease of working on that spark ignited engine is actually easier to find those mechanics than it is a diesel mechanic.
And John, share with our audience how it works related to the infrastructure and what does it cost? How complex is it to put in propane infrastructure in your yard?
So propane infrastructure, it comes in a variety of different ways, depending on the size of the fleet. But I'll tell you that as far as suburban propane goes, it's one of the things that we do best at. We will be able to size a tank and a pump and motor for the fleet, and be able to put it on that fleet manager's property at no cost to the actual fleet manager. We'll actually provide the infrastructure costs. Now, we're going to have you sign a contract to have you buy that propane from us exclusively, but at the end of the day, we're going to be able to provide that the tank, the pump, the motor, all the infrastructure and everything like that on our dime up front, and sell you back the propane at a much lower cost than gasoline or diesel is today. And again, like I said, we're going to size it up and make it as easy as possible for that fleet to be able to make that transition into propane using our infrastructure. Question? Okay, so the question was, is there any type of upgrade needed for existing infrastructure if they're using traditional propane today to transition to renewable propane? And your existing infrastructure will be able to use renewable propane today, just like your traditional propane. There is no change. The molecule for renewable propane and traditional propane is all C3H8, which is the exact same molecule. So you don't need to change anything. Now, if you're changing propane suppliers or propane companies, because you want to make the move from traditional propane to renewable propane, there's not a whole lot of us out there that are selling renewable propane. So at that point, what we would do is we'd come in and evaluate what equipment you have on the ground, who actually has title and ownership of that equipment. If you actually have title and ownership of the equipment and want to run renewable propane, that makes it's an easy switch, and we can start filling that tank tomorrow. If the other existing propane company has title and ownership over that equipment, then we can do one of two things. We can either buy that equipment out from that other propane supplier, or we can go ahead and just put our equipment in and take their equipment out. Question. The question is, what is renewable propane? So renewable propane is basically it's a byproduct of biodiesel or biojet fuel. It's refined out of fats, oils, and greases. At the byproduct is actually a gelatin that we need to hydrogenate to be able to create that C3H8. But that in that process, we actually have a much lower carbon intensity score for renewable propane than traditional.
Yeah, propane is a byproduct of natural gas mining. It's a byproduct of refinement of oil into gasoline or diesel. So it's always been a byproduct, but renewable propane is also a byproduct. It's sustainable aviation fuel. When it's being made, you get 6% of that is going to be renewable propane. Same thing with renewable diesel, and all of the refineries that have moved from conventional oil to diesel that have gone to renewable diesel can't help but make renewable propane. So we have a tremendous source of it, and it's mostly used in California and now Oregon and Washington because of the low carbon fuel standard credits. But even in Virginia, with no credits, they put renewable propane on a state contract so that people could do it there, even without the incentives, because they can drop it in and make a difference in their climate goals.
Stephen, I'm going to have you expand a little bit about how should a fleet manager, a fleet analyst, I guess, make the case for financial sustainability, environmental sustainability benefits. What have you seen in your best practice fleets that you work with, as far as how do they convince the people, the regulators, the people in the executive office, the people holding the purse strings, of how to plan and how to make the case to get the money to make it all happen?
Well, fortunately, uh, in this particular area, if you're buying a diesel bus, and I'm making up these numbers and they're generalized, but I want you to see the incremental cost differences. If a diesel bus, a 77 passenger Type C conventional bus is $225,000, then that same bus on propane is going to be about $210,000. So it's less than diesel. Remember, our recipe has to be cleaner, cheaper, work just as well, and we have to have a lot of that energy source. So it's already less than diesel. So you have a financial case for the capital expenditure that's already better. Okay. The other part is the environmental part. We talked about the particulate matter. That's one of the big toxic, emissions that we need to get rid of. But then there's also the NOx, and the propane engine that we have in our powertrain has the ability right now to achieve the 0.02 NOx that's proposed for 2031. Okay, so you have some future proof in this as well. So not only meeting today's standard of 0.2 and 2027 standard of 0.035, it already meets 0.02 standard on NOx. So we're reducing particulate matter we're reducing NOx, the two toxic ones. And thanks to John and the renewable propane, we're less on the carbon intensity of greenhouse gases as well. So you have a really good mathematical case for the emission part. But my favorite is the financial part. I just did a podcast with Anthony Jackson in Bibb County, Georgia, and we did a year. You talked about going 2 million miles, right? He goes 2,053,000 miles a year. He spent $790,000 on his propane. So that was 39 cents a mile. Did the same thing with his diesel, because he's about 2/3 propane and 1/3 diesel. And he did the same thing with diesel, and it was 66 cents a mile. So he's saving 27 cents a mile operating on propane, going the same miles in the same year. And so that wasn't enough. We did the same maintenance cost. We added up all of the cost to operate his diesel, all of the cost to operate his propane, and spread them out over the same miles in the same time period. And he was saving 23 cents a mile. So 23 and 27, 50 cents a mile he's saving operating on propane compared to diesel. And with 2 million miles, what's that? That's more than lunch money. That's some dinner money at $1 million a year in fuel and maintenance cost savings. So when we can get people aware of those things, especially BAs, CFOs, superintendents, when you can meet both of the goals of reducing emissions and reducing the cost, you're on your way, and we have a lot of it, thanks to John. We're on our way to having a successful adoption of it. And now since we've been doing it for about 10 years, we have fleets all over the country that have reached 100% of their fleet being propane and turning it over. That doesn't happen unless it's financially sustainable to do.
So a fleet plan could conceivably have multiple fuels and to complement the electric, and maybe the savings from the propane, from switching from petroleum diesel, some of that savings could help you with the incremental costs on going electric for compliance purposes.
It's going to be a mixed fleet. Right now, we don't have the funds to be able to electrify all of our vehicles. Now, don't get me wrong. If you have the money, I would love to sell you an entire fleet of electric buses. Okay. We'll do that. I promise. But to be able to do this in a sustainable way of growth, replacing 10% of your fleet and doing electric buses where you can get the funding to make it happen, but then filling in with a near zero gets you to achieve your climate goals as well.
Jerry, tell us a little bit about your operations as far as how do you fill up all these buses with propane?
So our drivers, they go around the corner to a competitor to Suburban, Superior Propane. They have a tank and a fill. They maintain it all. We don't have any infrastructure on our property for propane. The drivers, they go off site and fuel, which makes our life a little bit easier because we do have a fueler that does fuel all our diesel buses and plugs in our electric buses. So that's a job in itself with 120 diesel buses.
And that propane contract, is that a public contract that you know approximately what you're paying for propane right now?
I'm not sure what we pay per gallon for propane, but all the infrastructures, it's not on a contract. It's all maintained by Superior Propane.
That's a rather unique situation, having a propane provider right across the street that, you could pull into. But to John's point, I'd say of all of the fleets, and there are 1,100 school districts nationwide now that have adopted propane. I'd say 98% of them go, John's way of, hey, come in, we'll set up a small tank for the first 5 buses that you do, but after you get the next 10, we'll put in manifold another tank next to it. But they don't have to worry about that because you keep it full all the time with your telemetry that goes on there, and so you don't even have to worry about it, and you maintain it. But tell I think you need to tell people what kind of rates they can lock in for a year or 2 or 3 years.
So yeah, we do have what we call fixed pricing. So if you want to lock in your propane price for an entire year, and usually I tell people start looking at locking in a price in the summer months because historically speaking, propane is a heating fuel, and so in the winter months the price of propane goes up because the demand goes up. It's a heating fuel. So if you're looking at your school year, where you're for your school buses, the winter, and you're operating in the winter months, usually the price of propane is going to go up. So if you're looking in the summer months to actually lock in your school year prices of propane, you're going to get a much better price by actually writing that fixed price agreement in the summer months for your winter gallons. And you can, get much better pricing that way. And I mean, we've got fleets across the country right now getting propane delivered for well under $2 a gallon. Some of them are around, about $1.60 a gallon with some fixed prices in place for their school year. Now, it all depends on where we're at in the country. I mean, we are here in California where terminal prices are probably the highest they are in the country, and everything is kind of based off of what the terminal prices are. But even so, comparative to gasoline or diesel, your price of propane is significantly less. And again, you can be even less by locking in a fixed price for 1 or 2 years. And usually, I don't like to go more than 2 years out, just because the rate of propane could be dropping even lower. And once you do get a fixed price agreement in place, you are set with that price until your contract ends.
And John, just to follow up, Suburban can cover all of Northern California and provide renewable propane.
As far as renewable propane, and this is a pretty big announcement that was made back in April, we are selling renewable propane across the state of California. Everywhere in California can get renewable propane from Suburban Propane today, which we're really excited about that. For a few years, we had it out in Southern California. That's where we had all of our supply, but we are now able to supply renewable propane to every location throughout the state of California. And for that matter, we're going up into Oregon and Washington, as Steve alluded to earlier. And another kind of a big deal is we are actually servicing some customers out in Florida and in other states with renewable propane in the coming weeks. So, but we are really excited about our announcement of going renewable propane across the entire state of California.
John gets around. I was just in Anchorage yesterday in Alaska with our Bluebird dealer up there, and they were talking about you. Said, had John had come up there and putting together things for, fleets in Alaska.
Are there readily available current public agency contracts that are available for renewable propane for Suburban that other agencies that don't want to do competitive bid process they can piggyback on?
I'm kind of confused on that specific question. I mean, we're open to bid on any government contract that is available today, and if you have renewable propane in your government contracts, please let us know, and we're definitely willing and able to bid on that with renewable propane. As far as the pricing goes for renewable propane in the state of California, and I do have to preface that, our price for renewable propane today is competitive with traditional propane.
So it's on par with traditional? Okay.
Yes, it's on par with traditional propane.
Oh,
Now
that's a great opportunity. So I'm going to open it up to questions now from the audience. If we have anyone that would like to ask some questions about propane and how you might bring that into your fleet, renewable propane. Any questions? Yes, sir.
The question was, do we know if the federal tax rebate is set to be renewed? I don't know if it is at this point yet.
I've talked with the folks in Washington on a regular basis. It did expire. It started back in 2006, but it did expire December 31st, 2024. Each year since 2006, Congress has at one point or another gotten around to it because it has bipartisan support. I don't think that it has the support to make. This is just Steve Whaley talking here. That it has in the past. So I wouldn't look for that 37 cents a gallon, but all the numbers that we've been talking about, because I stopped talking about that, December, 31st. It's not in any of our calculations and not in any of the, 50 cents a mile savings. I took out the 37 cents because you really don't need it to make it happen. It's great if it's there, take advantage of it. But the folks that I've talked to in Washington recently give it about a 30% chance of it coming back.
Other questions? Yes, Chris.
So I have a question that's along the same line. Because you're filling these buses with private fuel, are they exempt from the road charge registration fees that we see on other alternative fuel vehicles? Because you're not paying gas tax. Do you know?
I think I heard the question as far as road taxes go, and road taxes are on every fuel, and it goes by state. You have the federal road tax and you have the state road taxes and such, but most school districts are exempt from that, and that goes for any energy source for that matter.
Yeah, I think it depends on what state you're in, though. But yeah, we still are going to have to charge the road tax unless you can provide us an exempt certificate.
It's kind of like that nasty word lately, tariffs. Our school bus prices haven't changed at all, but tariffs. Well, what time is it now? Kind of look, at it, and we have to do the same thing when there's because tariffs is basically an import tax, and so that goes on top of it. So we're not changing any of our bus pricing, but tariffs change, daily it seems now.
Any further questions? Does the panel have anything they'd like to add? We have a few minutes more. We're ahead of schedule.
Well, we have the folks from A to Z over there, Larry, Rodney, Miz. Thanks for being here. If you guys want to find out any pricing for, EV, propane, gasoline, diesel, we have all of them, and that's not only in our type C and type D, but also in type A with our microbird. They can take care of you. The life expectancy of a propane, it's the same as a gasoline engine, so they're gonna be the same. We did a big deal up in Minnesota not long ago. It was last year, you know, when the first one reached 275,000 miles. Now it's up to 340,000 miles, and he's replaced a radiator. Now, I can't promise you that's going to happen on every one of them, but that's the kind of longevity. And it used to be, because shh, don't tell anybody, I have an old 7.3 diesel in an excursion from, you know, way back, and I use it to pull a boat and RV and things like that. That thing was considered a 1,000,000-mile engine. All right. But today we have restricted diesel so much that we spend more on the after treatment than anything else. Okay. It's not the diesel engine, but it's the after treatment to keep it going in the uptime. And to Jerry's point, we're seeing way better uptime with our spark ignited, especially on the propane side, because you don't have the carbon buildup that's going on the cylinder walls and things like that. The oil changes are, you know, I mean, you can't go by the color of the oil because it all looks, you know, very clean. You have to go by, hey, the lubricity is broken down on it. And that's the same maintenance as a spark ignited engine on gasoline. So we're getting, you know, the gap is getting closer. Because we don't have a particulate matter filter. It's just three-way catalytic, you know, converter that's on there, just like your car. So there's no maintenance on that at all. And, you know, the spark plugs are the same as, you know, basically on your gasoline. But the injectors are a lot less than the diesel injectors too. They don't have to deal with the high pressures of, you know, the bar pressure you have on diesel that you have on gasoline. So in almost every way that I can think of, you're going to have more durability and reliability, you know, over that. We have the same engine, not in a school bus, but that goes in the Ford F-750, and Roush is our powertrain. So I work with them very closely. They go into U.S. postal contractor trucks that are driving 120,000 miles a year. And so they're talking about saving some money. They're going through 18,000 gallons of propane and saving, you know, 50% of their fuel costs. But they build in replacing those engines every 3 years.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
So just before we, I guess, wrap everything up, when it comes to propane and propane infrastructure and everything like that, and I know this panel has been about propane buses and propane vehicles, but those of you out there that have been required to actually go with an electric bus or an electric piece of electric equipment and may be struggling to get power from the utility company, we do also have an option out there for a propane powered generator that can power your buses and to charge that bus with a level 3 charger. So that is an available piece of equipment for those of you that have been, again, were required to go with an electric vehicle because of whatever the state is put on as far as your requirements go, and you may not have infrastructure installed for EV charging. We do have that where we can actually get that supplied to you much faster than the utility company can as well. So again, just want to throw that out there on that point. So that specific unit is actually going to be running and charging a bus when we take a break. It's from the e-boost unit that's going to be out front. Question?
That charge system?
The question was, do I know the approximate cost of kilowatt? I do not know the cost of the kilowatt on that particular unit right now, but I'm sure that there's going to be somebody there that can actually answer that question if you want to take a look at that unit at the break.
Is it full?
Yes, it is mobile.
Okay. Last chance for questions from our audience. Okay, I'd like to thank our panel, Stephen, Jerry, John. Thank you very much. I'd like to
Keith, thank you for making it all happen. Appreciate it.
And again, if you haven't been to a Clean Cities event in the past, we welcome you here. Please go to our website, cleancitiessacramento.org, and make sure you're on our mailing list, which I'm sure you will be if you register for this event. And again, if you have ideas for future presentations, webinars, we want to hear from you, our stakeholders, so we can make these upcoming weeks and challenging that we're all trying to deal with how to comply. The best way to do this is to hear from people that are already trailblazing and working on it, and hearing what's working and what's not working. And that's the reason we always like to have our fleet professionals on our panels, so that way they can tell you, what's worked, what was challenging. And I'd like to especially thank Jerry here today for sharing his information about the Elk Grove School District. So again, take care, and let's give this panel a round of applause.